All right, I'm here today with my good friend, Mr. Cory Sutton, Sergeant Cory Sutton with the OU Police Department. How are you today?
I'm doing it. I'm here.
Am I
I'm
right with
good.
that, Sergeant?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, no promotions lately. So,
No, not yet.
okay.
Probably not going to happen for a while.
So, Cory and I, we met. I'll tell you what's interesting about this, Cory, that you may or may not know. I was actually working on a training for first responders and law enforcement that I was trying to do. And I tried to get some of the local PDs to work with me, some of the local law enforcement. And because I couldn't do the CLEAT training certification, they would not do it with me. Well, I say they wouldn't. It was harder for me to get them involved.
Sure.
Um, and I was talking to you, and I both had gone through partners. I think you had just finished up with partners, and I've been done a couple of years. And somebody else it may have been Aaron Taylor, I can't remember, but somebody through partners said, "Hey, why don't you talk to Cory Sutton? He's working on something." And so, sure enough, we called, we talked, and the rest is history. We've done.
We have taken off out there on the eastern side of the state.
Yeah. So Cory does what we're talking about. Cory does a CLEAT training for law enforcement on autism. You'll have to give them the exacts on it, but it's something to do with we used to call it engaging autism, but and we'll talk a little bit about that here in just a minute.
Sure.
We've done. I think we're at 6 or 7 now that we've done here.
Is it really?
I think so. Because
Wow.
we've done 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 6, if not 7. And I think last count I had over 200 law enforcement agents that we've worked with.
My count is, as of right now, I'm at 1,804 officers across the state. So
Yeah.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Yeah. Really cool. So before we get started into that, and I do want to talk about that, tell
Sure.
me your story. Tell me, you what people don't know is you're an advocate. You're out of Norman, but more importantly, you're a dad. So tell me a little bit about that.
So I have twin girls who are now 18 years old. Um, they don't actually have autism. They don't have a diagnosis of autism, but they do have something called Phelan-McDermid syndrome, which is it's a chromosomal deletion. They're missing part of a chromosome, but the symptoms that they show look an awful lot like autism. They mimic autism. They've got a lot of autism characteristics, but it's not actual. According to what we've been told by diagnoses, it's not actually autism. I would argue that in some cases I wouldn't argue it, but some cases I would absolutely argue, well, this is definitely autism. It just depends on the day with these two. They're identical twin girls. They got the exact same deletion of the chromosome. Um, one, I'm going to use the word functions. I don't like that terminology, but that's what I'm going to use. One functions at a higher level than the other one, but neither one of them is anywhere near 18 years old. One is down in the, I would say 3 to 5 year old range, and one's at about 7 to 8, maybe 9 year old range. So there's a bit of a difference between the two of them, and how they respond to things, how they react, how they operate. I mean, operate would be a really big word. So, but I've been living with these two for 18 years now, and it's probably going to continue for a lot longer. So,
Yeah. And your wife Tracy, who is
uh-huh.
amazing.
She's a speech pathologist in the Norman Public Schools.
Right. And so you guys, you work really hard with them, but with others too. And for that, I appreciate, what all you guys do. Tell me about the girls. What are they like?
Big time. Well, let's see, Alex, big time into movies. And when I say movies, digital movies don't count. It has to be the actual DVD, the disc, the Blu-ray. She has to have solid deals. The problem with that is that she wants more. She never has enough. We right now we're stuck on Trolls 2, which doesn't come out until July the 7th. But she is adamant that it's at Target right now and that we need to go to Target and get it, but it's not there. It won't be out until July 7th. The The sad thing about that is that come July 7th, when we get the movie, it's immediately going to change to another one. And so it's never right. It's never enough. It's never what really works, or it's never what she wants at that point. I mean, she wants it, but then she wants something else immediately. And her other big love is stuffed animals. She's probably got more stuffed animals than she does, and well, she's probably got more stuffed animals than she does DVDs. To her, they're all dogs. They're not all dogs, but she calls them dogs. Um, and she knows the name and the relationship of every single one of them. I mean, so this dog is this one's brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles, mothers, I mean, all of it. She knows it all. It's pretty impressive to actually check with that. And she knows the relationships. Um, she's very, 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 very possessive about both of those items, movies and dogs. Very possessive, which can cause some issues with her sister, who likes to push buttons and get in there and do things with those movies, and her dogs. Brooke, Tracy nor I, we're not really sure what Brooke is into, because she's into a little bit of everything, but she doesn't have a set specific, I want this. She really does like baby dolls, so we've really kind of started getting her more baby dolls, and she'll just walk around with baby dolls in her hands, and we have little pacifiers, and that makes her happy, so that's what we do for her. So, but she doesn't have she is not real, I'm going to use the word specific on what she wants to have, unlike Alex, who has to have a movie or has to have a new dog.
Okay, so tell me how you got into the training. Let's go into that a little
Okay,
bit. So the cleat training. What's the story behind that? And then tell for those that don't know, kind of what the training
sure.
involves.
Tracy and I both have a close personal friend who has a child with autism. He is now 21, I think. He's in his 20s, his early 20s. He's nonverbal, and he is one of those that likes to get out. He loves to wander. He loves to get out and go. And when he gets out and goes, he oftentimes gets naked. Um, and so you can imagine now a 21-year-old male walking down the street naked is probably not going to go well with the general public. So they've had some interactions with law enforcement, and they've had three really bad interactions with law enforcement. That really, it was more because the law enforcement that was involved with this didn't know what autism was, didn't know that he wasn't going to respond right away, didn't know that he was going to that he was nonverbal for one, and it caused some issues that went really south really fast between this family and law enforcement. So my wife, who's a speech pathologist, she was working with a lot of kiddos on the spectrum, and so I started talking to her about, I didn't know a whole lot about autism. I had no idea what it was, but I started working with her on different things, and the University of Oklahoma Police Department started sending me to conferences and trainings about autism, and through all that, my wife and I actually put it together, a class to teach law enforcement about autism. And the example that I'll give you is simply this. As a law enforcement officer, if I ask you a question or I give you a command, what do I expect? Usually it's a response, right? People will say response, either sit down or whatever that response, that command or that question is. But those that have kiddos with autism know that these kids, it's not they don't want to respond. It's not, oftentimes they're not capable of that immediate response. So if they don't give you an immediate response, law enforcement, what do? We step up, and it can turn into a big vicious cycle that you can't get out of really quickly, really easily. So my goal is to educate officers about autism, let them know, look, if you see this kind of thing, you might have to change your tactics a little bit, because what you were taught in the academy probably won't get you very far with these individuals on the spectrum. And it's not they don't want to comprehend or not comprehend. It's not they don't want to obey the command or respond to the question. They physically or mentally may not be able to do it right away. So Tracy and I we've been teaching this class since 2000. We started teaching it in 2011, so that's 9 years now. I can't tell you how many classes I've done, but like I said, I've taught by my numbers, I've taught over 1,800 officers throughout the years. It's a full 8-hour day. It's amazing to watch the end of the day and you've seen this at some of the trainings you've attended, how these officers will come up to me at the end of the day and they're like, "This is great. This is amazing. I wish I had this earlier in my career. Um, every officer needs to go through this, or needs to see some of this." And so I'm not doing this for me. This class isn't about me. It's about families with autism, and helping those interactions go better, smoother. The morning's class, the morning's part of the session, we talk about what autism is. What might it look like? Because again, no two are alike, obviously, but this is what is it? What could it look like? What could you see? What could you observe that might tip you off that, hey, something's a little different about this guy. I need to change my tactics a little bit. Um, and then in the afternoon, we talk about ways of actually interacting, doing interactions with these guys, and how to overcome some of the issues that they might have. Because again, those people that know, those families that know their individuals with autism, know that as the stress goes up, their behavior usually goes with it, and that behavior can cause problems for law enforcement because sometimes it looks violent or it looks physical. May not be, but it may look like it. So that's the whole goal, is we're just trying to teach law enforcement that it's this is might be what you interact with in the field, and this is how to get through it, how to work through it. And then at the end of the day, we always like to bring in a panel of either individuals on the spectrum or their families, and let these folks tell the officers their stories. Let them tell them what they want them to know, what they want them to get out of the class. And that's really, it's fun to watch that, because a lot of times these officers who've been sitting through this 8-hour class with me, they're into it. I mean, they're asking questions and like, well, have you thought about trying this? Have you thought about doing that? This is really, I mean, so even then the officers are really, really into the panel. They really like the panel, and that usually gets some of the highest reviews or highest remarks on the review evaluation sheets that I do.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite aspects of it too. Not just because I get to talk, and usually when I'm on the panel,
Yeah,
but no, because you really see them. I think as a parent, my biggest thing is um, I want to see a law enforcement officer care. I know that sounds crazy, but
yeah.
and you can see that is what my opinion's important at that point. And I think that's a really good aspect. I also like what you had said earlier. Oftentimes, and you and I have talked about this a lot, they'll come in because they get the cleat hours, and more
Right.
importantly, they get the mental health, because that's a harder one to get. And so we'll see law enforcement officers come in and sit there and think, okay, I'm sitting through this, but about usually within the first hour or 2 hours, you kind of see them go, okay, I get why this is important.
Hmm.
You mix in a lot of videos and a lot of cases that have come up because of this, and I think that really gets them. Because one thing we want to make sure is that everybody understands this is about the safety of the person with a disability,
Absolutely.
but it's also about your safety and your, you know, CYA, if you will,
Okay.
um, in a way, because so many times they don't understand that this individual. Well, for example, you and I have talked about how a lot of times if you look at a person on the spectrum, um, you can see things, tendencies that look like they mimic alcohol or drugs. It's not, but nervousness and repeating things and slurred speech and different things that it can easily be mistaken, but it could also easily be recognized if you just look for a couple of different things.
Hmm.
And I think I like that aspect of this a lot. But you almost see that light bulb click on with them when they.
Yeah, you can. I mean, I've had other parents who have sat through the whole class, which again, I have no problem with anybody coming to my class. I don't care if you want to, anybody can come sit through my class, because there's nothing that's law enforcement specific or sensitive, if you will. And I've had other parents sit through the class, parents of kiddos on the spectrum, and they've told me afterwards, it goes, I saw the light bulbs coming on. I could see these officers going, oh, really? Wait, what? And getting involved with it and actually understanding more about it. And it's fun to watch as the class goes on. More officers, because you know how I teach. I ask questions the whole time. I'm asking them questions, and of course, at the beginning of the morning, you only get a couple people who are saying anything. But by the end of the day, there's a large portion of officers who are putting input back into it. They're actually giving more people are talking about this, that, and the other, or asking questions about, well, if this, then what? Or, well, yeah, I had a guy that did this with that, and I don't know if it was autism or not, but how did you handle it? And so it's really fun to watch them come around to it, if you will, instead of it being because like you said, they may only be there for the hours, but those guys are often the ones that come up to me afterwards. I'm really glad that I came to this. Thank you so much. So
Yeah, we see that a lot, and I think what you said, the first part is kind of the what is autism, how do you recognize it, but the second part you get more into now how do you engage somebody with autism, and that's when they really start asking the questions, and we've gotten some pretty interesting questions.
yes,
You know, I think back to Salisol when we had a pretty good discussion with a couple officers, especially one in particular. But I think at the end that was good. It wasn't anything controversial. He just wanted to ask questions, and
yeah, yeah,
but yeah, they start to see that. I think that's important. One of my favorite parts is it's interactive a little bit. You make them do the sandwich or the
yeah,
bread.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, and uh, I think that's fun. So I'll try to set this up. So Corey basically sets down the ingredients to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Usually it's just peanut butter because we don't get to the jelly.
Never get to the jelly for some reason,
Yeah. And then has somebody explain to him how to make a sandwich. And
but they can't use their hands to
right,
talk.
right.
It's
And
just
it's
words only.
words only. And it's not as easy as it sounds. And Corey makes it a lot more entertaining.
I might play with them a little bit. I'll be honest, but I'm actually trying to do exactly the words that they're telling me to do.
Yeah.
And even when they realize what it is that I'm doing, it is still a struggle to actually tell somebody what you're wanting them to do without using your hands to talk like I am right now, or anything else. It's really a challenge because you know you think in your head everyone knows how to do this. Everyone knows how to open a jar. Well, how do you tell someone to open a jar? Actual step by step. It's not easy to do.
Yeah, it's and when you see them, they take off like this is not a big deal, and then suddenly you see them slow down and think
Yep.
things out, and then they're even when they're trying to think things out, it's not happening the way they want it to, and they get frustrated. But I relate that to being a parent and having to tell step by step, breaking things down. Terry and I, when we do our trainings, we discuss. Um, we've always been told in our life to calm down, but nobody's ever told us how to calm
Yeah.
down.
What does that mean? What does the meaning of the word calm down mean?
Yeah. And so that's where, this relates a lot. And they're extremely literal, black and white.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, tell me, tell me your mentors. Who are some of the people that you kind of look up to? Who are people that have helped you along the way?
Dennis DeBolt is the one that started that I went to a conference that Dennis DeBolt put on. He's got a website, autismriskmanagement.com, that I got to go to a conference. The University of Oklahoma Police Department sent me to one of his conferences, and it was for law enforcement and autism. It wasn't a full day long course, but that was to me the most eye-opening course that I went through, just because it really, again, at the time when I started this project, I didn't know a whole lot about autism. My wife did, and I worked with her to try to get some more knowledge about it. But his course was really eye-opening, as far as, to me it was at least, and about what you're going to see or what you might see. This timing issue where they're not going to respond quickly. And I've done research online, and you've seen my slides, and if I've got something in there, I usually put a quote to where it came from so that somebody can look it up and back up so I can back up what I'm saying. But a study that I found says that it could take up to 11 seconds for an individual on the spectrum to respond. Well, 11 seconds in law enforcement time is forever. If I have to ask you a question or give you a command and it takes you 11 seconds to respond, I'm again in a normal response to that I'm used to and trained for. That's not okay. I'm going to be now getting more frustrated with you, getting more angry with you, maybe getting more physical. You know, it's amazing how these guys, without meaning, can accidentally set off an officer. You know, they're not trying to, they're not meaning to. It just happens, unfortunately. Um, since then, I have met with what is her name? The one that taught me the sandwich trick. She's known as the raccoon lady, but I can't think of her name right now. She's the one that taught me the sandwich trick because I was at a conference that had nothing but educators in it, and I was the only law enforcement in there, and I was one of the few males that was in there because these were all educators that were all females mostly. There was a couple males, but not very many. And she called me out of the crowd to come up and do the sandwich trick with her. And let me tell you, it was brutal to be on that side of the deal and tell someone how to figure out how to make the sandwich. And all she had me do was butter a piece of bread. I've taken it a step further to make a whole sandwich out of it. So,
Of course you did.
of course I did, yeah, because it's a lot more fun for me to play because I know exactly what's going to happen. I know how it's going to go. I know what's going to happen. So, um, and obviously I've read Temple Grandin's books, and I've seen the movies about her and the HBO movie about her, and I've seen a lot of stuff. So those are some of the folks that I have actually really paid close attention to, and the raccoon lady and Temple. I mean, they're living it. They're actually experiencing this day to day. So that they're high on my list as far as of resources because they live the life. They understand exactly what it's like because they're doing it. Dennis DeBolt, it's his son that he did this for, is because his son has autism, and so he did this for his son's sake, if you will, to try to make his son safer in the community with police. And so, but those that live it, this is what it's about. So
What's what's some of the best advice you've received, and what kind of advice do you usually give? Now this is a little different. I usually talk what advice would you give to parents, but what advice would you give to either parents or law enforcement agents as you're uh, that you've maybe come up with?
I think first of all, slow down. I mean, you got to understand these guys they're gonna respond, but they're gonna respond in their time, which may not be what your time is. So we have to slow down, and I don't know if you can tell, but I talk fast, and so that's hard for me to do as well. Slow down, but it is something that you need to try to do as well because these guys process slower. I mean, every bit of information they're getting in, they get it in all at the same rate. That so sight, sound, hearing, speaking, feeling, it's all coming at them full force, and so if you're talking really fast to them, they may not be able to follow what you're saying just because they're going to lose track with everything else that's going on. The lights that are in the background, the other sounds that are in the background, they might hear it all at the same volume. Even if you're talking directly to them, they may hear the TV in the background or the radio around the corner at the same volume that you're talking to them. So which one do they pay attention to? So slowing down is by far probably the biggest thing is to tell parents and individual professionals is just if you're dealing with someone on the spectrum, slow down. Give them time to process. Give them time to respond. You'll see that you're actually getting further with it if you give them that time. Often you'll be getting more progress than you're expecting.
That's good advice for anybody dealing in teachers, parents,
Hmm.
anything. Yeah. So we talk to when we do a training, we say, and I had a speech therapist tell me this: when you ask them to do something, count to 15. If it doesn't look like anything's starting to click, slow down and think about what you asked. Cut out words. It's more it's easier to add words than to take words away. So start with small things. And
Hmm.
one of the examples I give is if I tell you, Connor, go in the living room, get your shoes, take them in the kitchen, put them on a shelf. Well, that's a lot of stuff to process when all I could say is, Connor, shoes, shelf, please. And I'm asking the same thing, and it's a lot less to process. I call
Is
that
four words Is 4 words easier to process, or is whatever, how many 20 words you just said in that other sentence?
Right, and I can add words to that if I need to. Well, I call that the cut the crap method because I don't have a better name
Right,
for it,
right,
but that's what
right.
it is, you know.
An example I give as well is simply this one. As a police officer, if I'm approaching you and I want you to sit down, I'm gonna say, "Hey, sit down over there." Well, where is over there? When I point, sit down over there, oftentimes those of us that are neurotypicals, if I'm pointing towards a curb, you think or understand he's meaning the curb. But if I point to the west, if the cardinal direction of west, I could be talking about Amarillo for all they know. I could be talking about New Mexico somewhere, because over there is anywhere. Over there is, again, over there. It's not specific. It's just over there. So that can lose people really quickly. You've got to be specific about, a lot of times, about what you're saying, because again, you said it earlier, these guys can be really literal thinkers, and over there is not a literal term for anybody, but it's something that all of us have been able to adapt to, and we understand it for the most part when someone is telling us where to go. But again, as a police officer, if I tell you to sit down over there, and in my head I'm thinking he's going to sit on that curb, and he just keeps on walking away to the west where I pointed, well, now he's leaving. Now what? I got to go get him, when actually he's probably going to the bench that was further to the west than I could see, or whatever. So, or he's walking to Amarillo. Who knows? I mean, so
It could be.
it could be, yeah.
Well, that's all I've got. Let me end by saying this. You and I, when we met, I think we hit it off pretty quick because we have the same mindset. A lot of times, we're both big
Mhm.
smart alecks, and we get each other. So, but we're also dads, and we understand what's going on. I want to say, and I've said this to you probably a million times, but thank you so much for what you do. From a dad's perspective, from a parent's perspective, thank you for coming up with this, because it scares us as parents to think that our kids could come into contact with law enforcement. And I'm a huge supporter of law enforcement, but again, when we've discussed this before, it is your safety first, and then let's see what the situation is, and then handle it.
Correct.
But as a parent, this helps me with a little peace of mind that this is at least out there, and a lot of people are getting it. I mean, you're saying over what, 1,000, over
1800.
1,800 now, close to 2,000, in Oklahoma alone, and that to me is good peace of mind. So thank you.
If it hadn't been for COVID, I would be over 2,000 right now, because I've had to cancel a
Yeah,
lot of classes because of COVID. So
yeah. But so from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for that. And
I'm happy to do it. You know how I enjoy doing the class. So, I
yeah,
mean, I have a good time with it, and I enjoy doing it. So,
yeah, I love working with you. We get you out here as much as we can.
mhm.
If anybody will listen. The other part of this, thank you for your friendship, man.
Well, thank you.
I really, I love getting to work with you, which may be why we get you out here as much as possible, because
Works for me.
yeah. So we need to get Tracy out here more, though. I know that's hard, but
Yeah, it's a little more difficult now because she actually has a real full-time job. So,
I won't tell her you said that. So
okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
maybe she won't watch this. So
Might get
um,
me in trouble.
all right, well, thank you so much.
Absolutely.